I do want to get your take on the drama this past week that came out of Washington when U.S. Senator from Texas, Ted Cruz, publicly declared his support for Somaliland recognition by the U.S. government. This prompted the Chinese embassy in Somalia to denounce it. The Chinese Foreign Ministry in Beijing spoke out on it. A lot of talk on X about this issue. What's your take on all of this?
It's the momentum. It's a momentum. We've seen that since the new administration arrived. We're even speculating about that. That's going to be a moment where you're going to see the call for independence for Somaliland to ramp up, because we already had signals from the former administration. There were people that really, I wouldn't say lobbying, but those really working hard into getting Somaliland momentum into DC, where Somaliland has, Somaliland can become an independent country. China's reaction, not surprising. China facing the same context with Taiwan, with other independentist movement around China. And we saw that China reiterated its support for one Somali policy, and they've been, the two countries have been kind of working together into the narrative of one country, one single country. So I'm not really surprised that China came out strong on that. I think it was really about to provide Somali with the support that needed, because in the current circumstances, when Ted Cruz goes on saying something like that, if nobody talks, and given how many African countries now are folding and bending to the U.S. administration, whims and agenda, you have the feeling that a country like Somalia can feel that I'm alone. No one's gonna speak for me if no one in that kind of situation. And China had to come out to say, no, we are against those kind of policy, reiterating their support of one Somali, which kind of also reflect to Beijing's own interest in terms of like one China policy.
So I just offer my American friends in Washington who are getting very excited about this and saying this is how we're going to stick it to the Chinese communists by recognizing Somaliland, that there is another side of this story that they may want to consider. Because if Somaliland does want to get international recognition at the United Nations, it is going to need China's support. Otherwise, it will not get past the UN Security Council. China will veto it. But
it's also going to need the basic support of African countries, and so far there's not much of a support for
African
Somaliland and independent Somaliland in Africa.
That doesn't matter if at the UN. Because at the end of the day, China has a veto at the UN, and it will just block it. And so if it wants to get recognition at the United Nations, where it needs to get full international recognition, getting the US is one thing, but getting recognized by the UN is a totally different thing. One thing that we did a show on Somaliland a couple months ago, and one thing that came out was from these analysts was that they may trade in Taiwan for China to get the support at the UN. And so as part of a deal, they'll say to the Chinese, listen, we will cashier our relationship if that is what will give us your consent to get recognition at the UN. It's a possibility. I don't really believe.
I don't really believe that to be a real bargain to put on the table because of importance, because of how relevant Somaliland and Taiwan are to the international system or to those countries at the one hand.
Then there's no international recognition for Somaliland.
So I don't really see how you are ready to bargain Taiwan for Somaliland. I don't see that happening.
It depends how badly they want international recognition. And if they don't have China's support, then they don't get international recognition.
Yeah, but I don't think in the US there's that much of support for independence of Somaliland to say we're gonna put the country of Nvidia or all those chip makers on the balance. I don't think so.
Well, yeah, just bear in mind that the last time the United States shepherded in a new African country, Sudan,
it would be disastrous.
It was disastrous. So we have very short attention spans in the United States. So a year or two. But this story is not over with U.S. recognition. It has to go the next step if Somaliland wants to eventually be recognized as a full country. And in order to do that, it will have to come to some sort of accommodation with China. And at this point, the only card that they have on the table is Taiwan.
And I mentioned
their relationship with
I mentioned African countries because China's position at the UN will also depend on how African countries are standing on that. If African countries say we're supporting that, China will not just block it at the Security Council because on the continent, African countries. I agree with that. But
I tell you,
if there's a strong opposition,
could not disagree with you more. 100%. Taiwan comes above every African country.
Oh yes, that's true. That's true.
Full stop.
Just to say that China opposition to Somaliland independence at the UN will very much depend on how African countries are taking that question first. Yeah.